I prayed, I asked, I cried. And then me and that woman, we conversated and talked about the Lord and what His desires.
She told you what was going on.
Yeah.
She told you how to repent, how to ask for forgiveness.
She just shared the good news of the Lord.
Okay.
You know, with me and my faith, I'm not well versed in the Bible, and I'm not. My memory of Scripture is not extensive. My husband is amazing. You know, he can recite the Bible and Scripture.
Yes,
yes, my husband today. My only husband, my first husband.
Yeah.
He's amazing. You know, he's very biblically. He has a lot of knowledge biblically. With me, it's more of a blind faith, like because I've experienced His grace, and I've experienced the change that can happen when you draw close to the Lord. So yeah, she just basically shared the good news of the Lord. She let me know that He was waiting for me, you know, and that all my sins could be forgiven, and I could live a different way, you know, and that He would help and guide me.
And
you know,
as
long as
her.
I knew, yeah, I just knew this time. I knew I wanted something different, and I knew nothing else worked. So what other choice did I have but to give God a chance to change me, you know? And so, that duration of my stay in jail, I knew I wanted something different. I grabbed a Bible and I started reading the Bible, the New Testament. I went to NA meetings and AA meetings in the facility. And I expressed my need and want for change, my desire for change. Like I would tell everybody, when I get out, I'm not using it anymore. I'm done. I'm just done. And that's what I did. You know, I continued, when I was released, I continued to go to meetings.
How long were you in jail that time?
That time I was in jail for about a month. Yeah, the longest amount of jail time I'd ever done was maybe 4 or 5 months, which, believe me, is a long time.
Yeah.
It's to be away from active society, you know, to be confined and told what to do, when to eat, when to sleep, to stand up for count, to, you know, prison and jail are not things that you want to experience.
Yeah.
But those are the type of things you do experience if you choose to make wrong choices in your life, you know. So I get out and I'm still living in my elements of addiction because I had nowhere else to go. But I wasn't using. And luckily the people, even the elements that I was in, they didn't expose me to those things because they knew I was trying to change. So they gave me at least that much consideration.
They respected you.
Yes. They showed me that much respect anyways. I don't know how much they respected me. But so my son was about to start a new school year. And I asked my sister if I could come stay with her so I can experience that first day of school with him and her, you know, to be there. Because it's something I hadn't done in so long. I think the last time I experienced the first day of school with him was preschool, his first year of school. So any other time after that, I was unavailable. So she said yes, and she allowed me to do that. As long as, you know, I didn't use it and I continued to, because I went to meetings, I continued to do meetings outside of jail, and I got a sponsor, and, you know, I started doing the necessary things to do to keep sober and clean and try to change my life. And it wasn't easy, you know, I had no job, I had no money. My mother, when I was staying with my sister, had to give me money for the bus to get to meetings, money for my cigarettes. You know, I was always going to my mother for things because I had nothing to do, to be able to do for myself. So about after 2 weeks of living with staying with my sister, she came to me and sat me down and was like, hey, look, you need to do something different. You can no longer be here. If you continue to be here, I don't think you're going to be successful in your recovery. Something has to change. So, panicked and fearful, I went to a meeting, an NA meeting. It was called Duners. It was my home group. It's where I started my recovery, basically, out of jail. And I went to my sponsor and I told her the situation, and she was like, okay, don't worry. We'll figure something out, you know. And so we went to a woman that was running sobriety houses, you know, sober living environments for recovering addicts. And she's like, I don't have any beds right now.
Was that like a non-profit?
These ones were more county ran, the one she had. But she told me that she had no room for me to be, but that she would give me a contact that possibly might have room for me. And that's when I met Wendy. And Wendy Mailer is a non-profit, faith-based organization It's a sober living environment for women, only women. She is a God-fearing woman. Her program is ran around the spiritual principles of God. She taught me so much. Jenny told me about Wendy, who runs the Doodah, which is a non-profit organization, faith-based recovery. So I called her first, and I told her my situation. She says, okay, well, you can come and pick up an application, and fill out the application, go over the orientation packet, I'll pray about it, and then you'll come for an interview. I said, okay. So immediately I went over there. I picked up an orientation packet, application, I went and I filled it out. I kept my appointment time. I went and I met with her.
And that was a ranch? That was a place?
It's a ranch, yeah. It's a facility that she owns. She actually had it in another small city, neighboring city. But that place eventually sold the property, so they had to find somewhere else. And God provided this place, which is a beautiful place, a beautiful piece of property.
So was she married?
Yes, Wendy is married. Actually, she's the first real example of what a marriage should be that I've ever experienced. You know, Charlie and her are such a great influence and example of what a married couple should be, what a faith-based relationship is based upon. And he's a normie. He's never done drugs or anything in his life. So he doesn't grasp or understand the concept of what how a drug addict thinks and reacts and behaves to situations. He just doesn't get it. And now Wendy, she is an ex-drug addict as well. And so she is in recovery. She's had her ups and her downs, but that's how it all led to her wanting to help women, is her faith and strength in the Lord and her desire to want to help women blossom and bloom and grow from, you know, the addiction that they're coming out of, because it's hard to adjust.
And there were other women with you, right?
Oh, yeah. The facility, it can bed up to 6 people, 6 women.
So is it more like a rehab?
No, it's a sober living environment.
Okay.
She doesn't do detox. She doesn't do counseling. It's like an adjustment.
For normal life.
Yeah. So since I went for my interview, and I told her, you know, and I pleaded with her. I said, you know, I want something different. I need something different. I said, I am broken and I am empty. Help me. You know, I'm an empty glass. Fill me. And I was so nervous, and I'm a chatterbox, and I'm very you know, here and there a lot, very active. And she said it was so hard for her to just kind of harness me in, you know, at first, because I was very strong-headed and strong-willed, and I was so used to learning living a certain lifestyle that it was hard to conform to what is expected in a normal, productive person, you know. So she accepted my application. I had no means of finances, so it was a scholarship. So I worked my butt off for her. I cut down trees, I did landscaping, I mowed lawns, I pulled weeds, I worked on cars, I built barns, I did electricity, I cleaned, I did whatever she asked, I did humbly and gratefully, with.
And that was something I've never done before.
No, I mean, I have experience in all these things, you know. In my addiction, I started working on cars because I got tired of waiting for men. And it was just easier for me to do it myself. You know, I've always been very capable, very good with my hands, and I've never feared getting dirty. And I was always like, well, if a guy can do it, I can do it better. You know, so I've always been a little competitive and independent, strong-willed. So I did all these things, and I did them very gratefully because she was giving me a chance to learn how to live again, you know. And she taught me the love of the Lord, what it is to be faithful and patient. She taught me accountability. She gave me structure. I learned how it is to be responsible, productive adult, and that we just don't do things on whims. You know, we do things with thoughts and plans and respect and responsibility. You know, and I didn't do any of those things. I never had those things. I just did what I wanted to do, and I did it when I wanted to do it.
Yeah.
And she taught me all these aspects of life and how to conduct yourself as normal as possible, considering our choices. I wouldn't be the woman I am today if it wasn't for her love and her program. You know, she's a very close and strong person that I hold dear to my heart. I would do anything for her. If she asked me to bend backwards, I would. You know, because she showed me that structure and that love and that way of life that I had never experienced or known. You know, and she made me. When you first get to the program, they have a thing called no fraternization, which is no encounters with the opposite sex. Because she's trying to teach you how to love yourself and appreciate yourself and just know you know what I mean, just know what you want. And I had to do that 3 times. I was always, you know, I was stubborn. Yeah. But it taught me what I wanted in someone, and it taught me how to appreciate myself, and it taught me my worth and my values, and it taught me to be patient and move into God's will. You know, that God had a plan. And I
just had to be patient.
Yeah, you just have to be patient and trust in the Lord's timing, you know. Because I thought I for sure was destined to be alone and never find love, and that I was going to be an old cat lady. Yeah, but yeah, I was just going to be alone in my life and never experience a husband or what it's like, you know, to have that connection with someone. So I've been clean and sober for almost 3 years now. I got clean July 16th of 2014. Was the last day I used any type of mind-altering substance.
Congratulations.
Thank you, yes. It's definitely an experience in life that I never thought I would be able to have. I always thought I would do drugs till the day I died. But thank God that, you know, he opened my eyes. He gave me a new way of living.
So when you got to this ranch, to this place, where was your son and what was in your daughter's life?
So my son was still living with my sister. She's taken care of him for most of his life after I went back into my addiction. My daughter had already given me my first granddaughter, and her name is Avea. And then she became pregnant very quickly with my second grandchild. And as I was living at the ranch, I was working on the barn, and Wendy came and said, "It's time," you know. My daughter was having my grandson. And so
you were able to go and...
I was able to go and experience that.
Did you have a car?
Wendy, no, at that time I did not have a car.
Okay.
Wendy took me to the hospital. You know, and I got to experience all these things. You know, with my granddaughter born, I was still in my addiction. I believe I was still in my addiction. Yes, I was still in my addiction. And so actually when the doctors gave me her to hold, because it was just, I was there for my daughter through all her pregnancies. I mean, all her labors. And they held her, and she was so lulling and so like, it was so hard for me to stay awake and hold her. I was so scared I was going to drop her because I was so sleep deprived, you know. So after my daughter was situated, I left. I needed to go get sleep. And shortly after that, I was arrested, and that's when I became recovered. And then she became pregnant with my grandson. And as I was at the ranch, she went into labor, and I got to go and I got to be present for that in recovery. And that was it was neat, you know. I wasn't falling asleep at holding him. So I continued to live at the ranch. I eventually got a job. My first job in recovery was waitressing, and I got a lump sum of child support from my son's father, and I was able to buy a car and insurance, and I gave to my church.
So you paid it for all the years prior?
Yeah, I didn't know that he was making payments for child support, and so I had quite a large amount of money.
So Wendy helped you?
Yeah, she took me to court and made sure that I took care of all my legal, you know, everything. Like, yeah, she taught us responsibility, you know, and like I said, how to be accountable, which I had no accountability. I didn't know that when you say something, you do what you say, you know what I mean? I wasn't accountable. I wasn't responsible like that. So yeah, I got a job. I was able to get a car. And so at this time, I'm paying financially. I'm able to financially give back to the doodah. And that was really nice too. You know, and I made really good money with tips because I was a waitress, and I'm pretty personable. I love people. I can interact with people very well, and it's nice because when you work in a job like that, or where I work now, you can share your experience of life. You know, I am not ashamed of who I am. I'm not ashamed that I was an addict. It made me into the person I am today, and now it made me appreciate everything I have in my life today. So
you probably appreciate it more than any regular average person would.
I think an average person that hasn't experienced a lifestyle like ours takes advantage of their life. When we experience the kind of life that we have in our addiction, and then we get to experience the feeling of recovery and what life is meant to be and feel, I think we appreciate it so much more because we know what the other side is like.
Yeah.
You know, with
and it's there.
And it's there. And it's very real. So my daughter, she had children one after another, after another, after another. Her relationship is not as healthy as I would hope, you know, but I love my daughter, and so who she loved, I loved, and I tolerated.
Was her husband using drugs?
He was not her husband. It was her teenage love, first romance. And yeah, he used drugs and drank and smoked a lot of marijuana, did a lot of narcotics, Norcos, which is an over-the-counter, a prescribed medication. And I believe he did a lot of cocaine. But he was also a known affiliated gang member. So, you know, that was a dangerous aspect as well. So my daughter I'm in recovery still, I'm working, I'm trying to do right, I'm living a different way of life, I'm able to do things for my daughter and her children that I never had done for her. I'm becoming more stable and capable for my son. And my daughter has my granddaughter Avea, and she has my grandson Junior, who we call Junie. And then she becomes pregnant with my third grandchild. And during this time, you know, my daughter is alone a lot. The father of her children is not what he should be. And she's in between my sister's and his mother's house all the time. And so at this time, she has Avea. She's got Junior, who's just learning how to walk, and she's pregnant with Analea. She's exhausted and she's overwhelmed. And this particular day, she's alone. And my grandson had just learned how to walk. And so the air conditioning unit at the mother-in-law's house, basically, it was not working. And so I had bought a couple of box fans for my daughter to put to where she could at least have air circulation because it's hot and my babies were there, you know. And so my daughter was tired. Avea, my granddaughter, my eldest, was sleeping. And like I said, my grandson Junior had just learned how to walk. My daughter's pregnant. And she falls asleep. My daughter falls asleep with my eldest granddaughter. And Junior was on the floor playing. And she has the box fan in the window, the sliding glass window with it shut, and a table in front of it. But my grandson, you know, he's still used to crawling a lot everywhere other than just walking. So he crawls under the table and he pushes the fan over. And when you exit that sliding glass door, just 2-3 steps, there's the ledge of the pool. And so my grandson falls in the pool and he drowns. And that was one of the most hardest days of my life. I got the call, and my daughter's just panicked, you know, and she's like, Junior fell in a pool, and I didn't know what was going on, and all I know is I jumped in my car and I told Wendy, I have to go, you know, and I ran every light there was, and the whole time I'm praying, please, Lord, please just let him be okay.
And she was very, very pregnant at this
very
point,
pregnant
right?
at this point, yes, with my third baby.
And it was recently, like a few years ago?
Yeah, my grandson died around August 29th, 2015. It's a day I will never forget. And so when I got to the hospital, they let me in. I didn't know what to expect, and they were still working on him on the table, you know, machines. And when I got there is when they finally, I think they were just keeping it up just until I was able to be there to be supportive for my daughter, you know. And he was on the table, and you know, and they finally stopped, and they turned off the machines, and they pronounced him dead, and I just dropped to my knees. I didn't know what to do, you know, and his body was, he looked so peaceful. He looked like he was sleeping.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't look like he was in pain, but his body was so cold and so stiff, and I still have dreams, and I still have nightmares, you know, and I still wonder if how much he suffered, you know. Was it quick? Did he just peacefully fall off to sleep, you know, because he looked peaceful.
Mm-hmm.
You just wonder those type of things, because it's the not knowing, you know, that makes it so hard. So, as we were planning, when my grandson died because of the circumstances, they took blood from my daughter, and she had marijuana in her system.
How long does marijuana stay in your sister?
30 days. Depending on how much you smoke, how much you use, you know. So, they tested her blood, and she was positive for marijuana. As we're planning the funeral services for my grandson, she goes into labor. Yeah.
Was it premature labor, or was she due?
Yeah, she was early. Yeah, the baby was early. Yeah, definitely. And
because of the stress.
I believe it was the stress, yeah, and just, you know, the trauma that we were all experiencing. Yeah, so her water broke at my sister's. We took her to the hospital. I went to the hospital around 5 or 6, and then she was born. The baby was born, you know.
How was her baby's dad? Was he blaming her for this, or how did he react?
You know, during the whole process of everything like that, he was in disbelief. He was just there. You know, he wasn't blaming her at the time. He was just there. You know what I mean? He did what he had to do to get as much.
Because he had his own issues, probably.
Yeah. He definitely had his own issues, and there's definitely some upsetting issues that occurred during everything that happened as well. You know, because we set up a GoFundMe account and raised a lot of money for funeral expenses, burial expenses. You know, and he and my daughter, they were not as responsible as they should have been with the money. You know. So my daughter's in labor. She has my little girl, Analea, my baby, my little sweetie. She's a sweetheart. She's one of the most sweetest little girls ever. And the day of my grandson's funeral is the day that CPS came and got my eldest granddaughter from my sister, which was very emotional. She was placed in foster care, and then they came to the hospital, and they took my little granddaughter, my brand new born granddaughter, away, straight from the hospital.
So your daughter was left alone, without kids?
Huh? Yeah, so my daughter was left alone without children. The death of her son, her daughter's taken, her world was completely turned upside down. She had never been away from her children. Never. Wherever she was, they were. And those children were never from each other. Wherever one was, they were. You know, they were a team. Like my granddaughter, she would run up to me, Grandma, you know, she would climb up me, and then my grandson, here come Junior, crawling across wherever, and he'd climb up my leg, and so I'd have them both in my arms, you know. They were never without each other. And Raina was always with them, no matter what, unless she left them with me. So, yeah, my daughter's world was absolutely turned upside down. She went on a little tangent, you know, she went a little hiatus or whatever, you know, and
so when you found God, did you tell her about that? Did she know God?
My daughter had experienced what recovery and God had done for me. You know, she was experiencing it too because of how it was unfolding in her own life. You know? So she knew it was real because of what God had done for me and what recovery was doing for me in my life. You know, she had her mother, which she had never really had the privilege of having as a child, you know. So she went a little off the deep end. Her and her baby's dad were doing whatever they wanted to do, you know, and then CPS obviously required her to go into a program. And it wasn't easy for her. The adjustments and the control and the loss of her life, it was a hard adjustment for her. And she got into trouble. She had a few little hiccups here and there, and she was dismissed from the program for a moment. It was just supposed to be very temporary, but it ended up turning into 3 months. And within that 3 months, she was with the father of her children, who wasn't programming the way CPS wanted him to. He wasn't doing the programs. He wasn't doing the required things that the courts wanted him to do. So their relationship was not good. It was toxic in the court of the eyes of the court. And she ended up getting pregnant again with her 4th child, and then came back to program, because if she didn't come back to program, she would have lost custody of her granddaughters, which she eventually lost anyways. My sister has guardianship of them. And that was because of the choices she made, to leave program, to come back to program, to not to follow rules. You know, she those are her consequences. So she ended up getting pregnant, and she conformed a little better to the program the second round. You know, it was still hard for her. She's still not a model idea person in program. And 2 weeks before my grandson's year anniversary for his death, the father of her children was shot and killed. So I received a phone call very early by his aunt telling me what had happened, and I had to go tell my daughter this. And she knew something was wrong when I walked. They're very familiar with me at the program because I'm very involved with her. And she knew something was wrong. She was like, at first she thought it was her grandmother. And she was like, no, Mom, no. I'm like, baby girl, I'm so sorry. And when I told her that it was Robert, you know, once again, her world just fell apart, you know. And I think the only thing that kept her going was the fact that she was pregnant, you know. And it was right before, they were just about to find out the sex of the baby. And I know he was very excited. Robert was finally trying to change his life to be better for his family. He got a really good job. He was actually, I think he was actually trying to change finally, but too little too late, you know?
Yeah. So he was still involved with the wrong crowd.
Well, obviously, yeah. He was at a house drinking with fellow friends, and a car was driving by multiple times and eventually pulled out a gun and shot Robert in the back. And because of his him drinking, his blood was very thin and they couldn't clot the bleeding, and so he bled out. He bled to death.
Was there a reason they shot him?
I'm sure it was because of his affiliation with his, you know, gang members.
So, Rani, you have been through a lot.
I've been through, yeah.
Yeah.
It makes me stronger. It makes me more appreciative. It gives me experiences in life that hopefully I can help other people with, you know? Like, I can be there and I can be a strength and an understanding that maybe somebody else couldn't be because of my own experiences. You know?
But you told me it's something I've never known.
Yeah.
It's totally different life. And I'm glad you're here today. I'm glad you're in your family, and I'm glad your life is totally different today.
Oh my gosh, my life is so amazing today.
So I know during this point, sometimes you met your husband.
Yes.
Can we talk to him?
Of course.
Would that be okay?
No, come here, love. Yes. So, I was able to first meet my husband. He came to a meeting I chaired. I would chair meetings at a recovery program, AA, and it was the Young at Heart Candlelight meeting at Living Sober in Minnesota, California. And he came in. It was his birthday. It was November 22nd, 2016. Yeah, and 15. My bad. And my years are so jump, you know. He came in with a friend of his, and he sat down, and they didn't stay for the whole meeting. And I remember seeing him, and I remember just curiously entertaining the thought of like, oh, he's tall and he's good looking, and he's foreign. His name, Vladimir, was very foreign, and he had a little bit of an accent, not very much. You couldn't really pick up on it unless you got to.
But you did.
Yes, I did, because he's very articulate in his way of sharing, and his way of his own testimony. Like, he's very well versed. He's very well spoken. And it's extremely intriguing. The intelligence that you hear come from him, it's nice.
Who are you talking about?
You, my love. So he came up to me and he apologized because him and his friend needed to leave my meeting early. And he didn't want to be rude. And he allowed me to know that. So we had mutual friends on Facebook. And we ended up becoming friends on Facebook. And then at one point in time, in his... during this time, he wrote a message on Facebook, and I could just feel his pain, and I reached out to him. You know, I asked him, "Are you okay?" And he didn't answer. He didn't respond to me. I think he thought it was a hoax. And I said, "Hello," and he's like, you know, I think he was completely shocked that I was talking to him.
Yeah.
And I told him about CR, which
you
is...
know, I remember that message. She scared us, lad.
Yeah, and I could just feel his pain. And
Can you tell us what happened at that point to your life, really quickly?
I
So you were just out, right?
Yeah, I just got out of prison, and you know, life became hard for me. I got depressed. I just didn't feel that I was where God wanted me to be.
But tell us, why did you get in prison? So you're my husband's brother. You were born in a Christian family. You knew everything, but during teenage years, you started making bad choices, right? And then you were in prison for
a long time,
8 years. They let you out early.
2 years the first time, 8 years the second time.
Yeah, and I know you became a good person in prison. He was writing me letters. He was like almost like a pastor there. And so you come out, you're a good person, and what happened?
Life was different for me. It was a very difficult adjustment from what I was doing in prison. You know, the relationship that I had with God there, the involvement in the ministry, to now I have to go to school, now I have to go to work, now I have to walk, you know, be humble.
And all these classes.
Yeah, and try to get my life together. And now I have freedom and money, and, you know, and at church, you know, when you get saved in prison and you're around people like me, like Rani, you know, you feel God's presence. And then when you come home and you go to an organized church where people just go there because
they're holy,
that's where they grew up. You don't feel that presence. You know, and
the adjustment between addiction lifestyle and going into, you know, a normal kind of, at least as normal as we can be, lifestyle. It all really depends on the environment you involve yourself in, on your success.
Yeah, I think the mistake that I made was going home into an environment with no accountability. I should have did what you did and went through a sober living and had structure and had somebody actually teach me how to live and become accountable and take care of responsibilities.
But if you do that and go into a structured environment, my strongest suggestion for you would be going into a faith-based recovery, like sober living, because having that basis of faith and that guidance from God, it really does help you become stronger and more accountable, and it's just a better foundation.
Yeah, so what happened with me, after a matter of time, though everything on the outside looked really good and everybody was really happy for me, but inside I was miserable. I was dying spiritually. I just was not happy.
So why were you miserable? You didn't have any friends, or you didn't have a person whom you could talk to, share, people would not understand you?
I was away for so long that I lost contact with all the people I grew up with. Also, I had no desire to go back to them, to go back to that lifestyle. And pretty much I just was isolated and alone. The only people I saw was my brother who I worked with, my mom, and my sister.
So that was not enough?
No, it wasn't enough, because...
He found himself lurking in old ways.
Yeah.
Because they were Christians, they were in church, they were good people. And you were a good person, but what happened? Why there was no connection?
When you're an addict and you've experienced an addiction in your life, you have to be able to interact and communicate with people like-minded, but like-minded in a way of recovery. In your addiction, it's best to surround yourself with like-minded people, people that have had experiences that you may have experienced and lifestyles that you may have endured as well. That way you don't feel so alone, because if you surround yourself with people that have never experienced it, you feel very lonely because they don't understand you. They don't understand what type of life circumstances you've gone through. You know?
So even though you're around the best people out there, but they don't have experience you did, there's still no connection.
Yeah, you don't feel like you're good enough in a sense, because how come is it that they didn't make the same mistakes I did, yet we grew up in the same home? So it was very hard for me to grasp all of that, and I got so used to being around a certain kind of people. When I came home from prison, I thought that, well, I'm just going to go to church and hang around normal people and everything's going to be fine, and I will never have this problem again. That just simply wasn't the truth. It wasn't long, maybe 2-3 months, that I had a first drink.
Again.
Again, with who? Was it you alone?
Just me alone.
Just because it was too much to handle.
I was
just to think. I think it was more or less to see if he can get away with it and whether or not he still liked it.
Yeah. And after a little bit of time, other things came in, and I got scared. For him. And I got scared.
So that was the church you went to. Was it ready to help people like you?
They're a great church, and they prayed for me for years, and they helped a lot while I was in prison, and they were most welcoming, but they were too small, and they weren't prepared for someone like me, or maybe I should just rephrase that to where I did not fit in with them.
Yes.
Well, when you come from addiction, you have to reprogram your entire life. You have to reprogram the way you think. You have to reprogram everything you've done prior to recovery. You know what I mean? You can't hang around with the same people. You can't have the same routine, and you cannot do the same things. Everything has to be different. And
so basically, when you're trying to recover, it's best to find a place like you found.
Yeah.
And they help you get on your feet.
Well, it's best to go into a rehabilitation, a rehab, and then go into, I believe, a sober living environment. Like I said, more favorable towards a faith-based sober living environment, because it gives you that foundation, that spiritual foundation that is very healthy and helpful.
Yeah.
So you guys were both able to do it, and tell me how you met. So there was this Facebook message.
Yeah, I poured my heart out on Facebook and told everybody, in a sense that on the outside I look like I'm doing great, but inside I'm dying, I'm miserable, and it's very hard for me, and I'm struggling. And
I just felt for him. My heart just wept for him, and I had to reach out to him, and so I did.
And she did, and invited me to go to church with her.
I invited him to Celebrate Recovery, which is a faith-based recovery program. It's like NA or AA, except for it's a faith-based through a church. It's a very good coping mechanism. And
it was something I heard about, but I had never gone to. And when I went to Celebrate Recovery, and I seen
the
hundreds of drug addicts, alcoholics, all these different people, my kind of people, in a sense, whom God had set free, and they're just worshiping God, and praising God, and the meetings afterwards, and nobody is ashamed, everybody is nice, it was... You feel part of. It was a really, really good environment. It was like, wow, finally a place for me, and I started to go every week with Rani, no matter what. No matter how tired or what. He'd even miss class for me. He just, and he would sit next to each other. Yeah. And he'd be so nervous. His foot would rattle, and he would fidget. And,
and I would catch him smiling at me all the time.
So,
and we swore that we were just going to be friends. You know?
When did you guys get those first feelings?
Well, you know, we would conversate for hours at a time, message back and forth, video chat, and we would just share experiences and desires and things we hoped for and prayed for in our future. And it just blossomed from there. And I think it was when he told me that for me not to conform myself to be something that he would desire, but to continue to be who I was and grow and change and blossom in my direction that I needed to in life is when I actually knew that he was someone I could be independent and strong and live life knowing that I didn't need to fear jealousy, control, or superiority, you know.
So, okay, your love grew, but then you have a child with you. He's 12 years old now, right?
Yeah.
Lad, what did you think of that?
The first time I met Caden, he was still 11. Strong-willed. He was a boy. And I didn't quite exactly know how it was, he was going to fit in the picture. I didn't know how everything was going to work out. I didn't even know at the time that I was going to marry Rani and how it would happen because of the enormous circumstances and hurdles.
The lifestyles, they were so different.
But at that point, you told him a lot about yourself, right? Did you?
Yeah, he knew. We shared a lot, like, for me, I never would have, if I were to meet him on the streets without the knowledge that I have, I never would have guessed he'd ever been in prison for any length of times. Not just a length of time, but multiple years at a time, he doesn't come off as that type of personality.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, God had transformed me. Our lives are similar, but yet so different. But
like his drug of choice was heroin, mine was meth. Totally two different types of addiction in itself.
But you guys understand each other.
We do.
Yeah.
And you guys are on the same path. I'm not gonna do it again.
No.
I want a different life.
No, I am done.
And you guys support each other.
I believe he is done too.
Yeah.
And we're working towards a good life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so him and Caden, they spent a lot of time together when they first were introduced with each other. Like, Vladimir has done so much for me from the very beginning. When we first met, I was unemployed, and he would help me with my bills. He didn't have to. He did it because he wanted to. He spent a lot of time with Caden at first, which wasn't a completely different kind of experience for my son. My son was basically raised by nothing but women, a constant female example in life, so he's a little sensitive, and he's very passionate. So they spent a lot of time, and I was unemployed, and so Vladimir would help me financially at this time because my unemployment had just ended, and he didn't have to do that. He for the man or my family. I never experienced
someone taking care of you.
Someone, wanting to help me. And,
and this was at a time in my life where I was barely getting on my own feet because I was gone for so many years. I had nothing. But God always provided.
God has always provided
everything
for us.
That I needed, not just for me, but for her as well. When I was in prison, a pastor told me something I will never forget, and it was a principle that I applied to our relationship. The Bible says that God's gift will make a way. That we have to make a way for God's gift. He says, so if you are praying for a wife, which I had been for years, and he didn't know that, but he said, if you are praying for a wife, then you need to make room for her. You need to get used to half of your closet. You need to do this and do that. And when I met Rani and I knew that I wanted to marry her, I felt that it was my duty to take on the responsibility before she was even my wife.
And he did too. He would come and pick my son up every morning and take him to school. I mean, there's just so many things that I had never experienced a man doing for me that he did so willingly. and freely, you know, and it just made me fall more in love with him, you know, to know that.
It was just too good.
Yeah, I even in the beginning, I even told him, you know, I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop, you know, like, I keep waiting for you to turn into this ogre or, you know, some type of man that you might be hiding underneath there, you know, but he's always stayed very consistent in the kind of man that he is, you know, and I am not the easiest person to adjust to, am I?
And he did.
And he has, and he still is. And
he's patient.
He's so patient and so loving.
So, lad, you became a husband, a father, and a grandfather.
All in 1 year.
Yep.
All in 1 year. And I'm not gonna ask how old you are. You don't have to tell.
I'm older. Yeah, all that. And, you know, God had provided and made way for everything that occurred. We weren't actually supposed to get married till this year in September. And God made it possible for not only us to get married, but for us to establish a home, a foundation for a home, you know, at least the beginning structure of one, so we can start growing and becoming
a family.
A family, yeah.
And it's still not easy. We don't have everything we want, but God has given us everything we need.
Absolutely.
And we still keep praying and asking for the things that we need for our family.
He still keeps showing up for us. Every time we pray for something or extend our desires to our God, He somehow, within either the matter of days or maybe weeks or a month, He shows up, you know, and He allows us the knowledge to know, like, look, hey, look, I'm right here. I'm working in your life. Don't give up. And don't lose faith.
Yes. So, lad, you have a son. Is it easy? Like, you have Caden. And he's your, like, stepson, right?
I don't like...
You don't like that word.
Like that word.
So tell me, how is it? Because, like, I know I have a son, and some days it's so hard. Like, it is so hard to raise your own son. Rani came with a son into your life. Is it easy for you? How can you manage it?
It is. For the most part, it's easy. I feel as if God has prepared me for this role for a long time.
Really?
He is so much more patient with my son than I am myself. I'm the tyrant.
So do you feel like he's your son?
Absolutely. I love him. You know, Caden is a great kid. We have a great relationship. You know, we love to spend time together and do things. But most importantly is he respects me and he listens to me and he trusts me.
Okay.
And Caden's never experienced that type of male influence or figure in his life prior to Vladimir. So I am grateful for God for giving us the perfect man, the right man for our situation, the right man to endure with us, to grow with us, and to experience with us. Because, you know, I have to appreciate everything about him.
And lad, for him, in order to respect you and love you, you probably have done something good. You've done something good, so he loves you and respects you, right?
He's very patient. He's very involved.
I've seen those pictures on Facebook when you teach him how to make pancakes and other stuff, and that's just so cool.
We do a lot of things together. I take him to school, I bring him home, I help him with his homework, I make his dinner. You know, we work as a team.
So basically,
he's the level-headed parent, and I'm the outrageous one. Like, you know, me, I'm a, look, check it out, bud, you better, you know, and Vladimir is more of a, okay, let's talk about this, let's think about this, let's work this out. You know, me, you better do what I say, or else.
I think what happens is as we grow older and become parents, we take on the roles that we needed from our parents, because my dad was very much like you are, very strict, structured, and it didn't work well for me. So the way I parent with Caden is the way that I wanted my dad to be to me, which was rational,
totally
logical,
different.
Understanding.
Approachable. Whereas Rani, you needed that strong person to point you in the right direction, and you didn't have that.
Well, I think I had too strong, too overbearing, too abusive.
Rani, can I ask you this question? What about your tattoo?
Uh-huh.
And I know, Vlad, you have tattoo. And I know...
I have several.
Yeah, I know. But Vlad and me, we are all from Christian families. And I know it was like, no. It was like sin. And, I know a very Christian person, when he sees someone with a tattoo, the first reaction is like, he's a bad sinner. He's a bad person. So, like when I saw you on pictures first time, I was,
Oh my goodness, huh?
No. God, I've been through a lot in my life. And when our baby was born ill and all this stuff, that was a change for me in a way. So when I saw Rani, I had nothing. Like I didn't have those feelings, but I know if my mom saw you or a different person saw you, they would think you're a very bad person. But you're a very good person today. Yeah. You're a Christian. You changed your life.
Even my addiction, I was a good person. I just didn't make good choices.
Yes.
And, it was funny because that was one of my biggest fears meeting his mother. I was like, oh my gosh, what is she going to think of me? I'm a tattooed California girl that talks real fast,
Yeah.
And I was terrified. I even wore a shirt that I can conceal my tattoo because I didn't want preconceived judgment,
Yeah.
Because I do care what people think of me. But once people meet me and realize the type of personality I am, they see God's light in me, and they see that I'm good, and I want to succeed and be positive in my life and turn to a positive direction, And tattoos are just a taboo, it was just a form of expression of beauty that I felt and wanted to express in art,
So tell me, how old were you when you did your first tattoo? When you did this tattoo, why did you do it? Did it hurt? What is this? Like for me, I have no idea what that is.
My very first tattoo, my mom always told me, wait till you're 18 to do any tattoos. Don't do that to your body, And so when I turned 18, I took a safety pin and some Indian ink, and I did a little daisy on my ankle. Me and two of my girlfriends.
You did it yourself.
I did it myself. Yes.
So how did you do it?
With the safety pin and Indian ink and a lot of alcohol.
Wow, and you were drunk. Okay.
Yes. And so with this one right here, this was actually I had a relationship with a man that I thought I loved, and I put his name on my body. Mm-hmm. Well, obviously that relationship didn't pan out. Don't ever put a name on your body other than your children's or your mother's. So I hastily covered it with a different tattoo. It was a peacock, and it was very poorly done. So when I came into recovery and I could financially fix it, I did. This is a very expensive piece of art, a very painful piece of art, and it took a long time to fix as well. It was over maybe a year's duration of work.
Wow. So what's there? I see some.
So there's flowers, hibiscus. I forget what these things are called. Daisies. It's a lot of color
flowers.
And a lot of shading and a lot of to cover the previous tattoos. So.
Wow.
It's more what did you call it? Like a Japanese floral.
So what they do?
Lotus.
It's beautiful. I see the flowers, but when they did it, like, did they get to get you numb, or did it hurt?
Sometimes he would numb me, and sometimes not, depending on the type of mood he was in. Tattoo artists are very their moods fluctuate. He's a very nice man. He's also in recovery. He's actually my sponsor's husband. So. This area here, extremely painful. Mm-hmm. This area here, extremely painful. I don't suggest anybody to get tattoos in these areas. Mm-hmm. It was very hard to endure the pain, but I did it because I wanted the art. So.
And I know it's possible to get rid of tattoos, but
it's also very painful.
It's also very painful. And I don't think
a longer process.
And I don't think you're ready to do that, right?
Oh, I won't remove this, no.
Okay. So how do you feel about that? Is that like memory? It's part of you. It's part of your life. It's part of who you are.
It's an expression of who I am, yeah.
And you're not ashamed of who you are because you found Jesus. Mm-hmm. You found a better life.
I think everything that I've experienced in my life and my addiction and my expressions and my ways have brought me closer to God, have brought me closer to appreciation, had opened my mind to new ways of living, had made me humble and grateful for the experiences I have. It's given me a new aspect and look on what my desires were for a man and the type of man I needed. Because I would have never went for a man as Vladimir. Like, Vladimir he's too kind, he's too sweet, he's just too many things good. You know, and I never thought I deserved good. It wasn't until I found God and began to love myself and realized what kind of treasure and prize I was. And then I was able to discover the type of requirements I needed in a man for myself. What I would tolerate and wouldn't tolerate, what was acceptable and unacceptable. I wanted a God-fearing man, you know, and he is amazing in his knowledge of scripture and verses, and
I know he is.
Yeah, he's an amazing man, you know, like, you know, one day he'll want to pursue his ministries, you know, and I will stand right there proudly beside him.
Yes.
Because I live in faith, I live in blind faith. I know what God can do, I know how he can save, and I know how he can change.
So, Vlad, I know there is your testimony somewhere. I don't know if it's on YouTube, but it's on Facebook, right?
Facebook, and there's
2 different testimonies
on YouTube.
Huh? It is on YouTube? Yeah. So, just going back, like when you guys were 12, 14, 16, when you started using drugs, what do you wish could be different from your parents? Do you wish they could save you from it? They could prevent you somehow? Do you think there could be something they could have done different, or was it just because it was?
I think my parents I don't hold them at fault. I don't blame them. Now that I am older, now that I have, you know, my own family, and I understand how hard and challenging life can be, I think they did the best that they could. You know, I just think that if my home life, from my perspective, you know, if there was more love, tolerance, and acceptance there, maybe I wouldn't have had to go look for that in my friends.
So, okay, you have a teenager. And me.
Oh.
Anyone has a teenager. And he's a troublemaker. And it's hard to love him. And what do you do? How do you love it? How do you love this teenager who causes pain to you, who breaks the rules, who's a troublemaker, and who's at the edge?
You continue to have faith, and you pray for God's guidance, and you just be there as much as you can. You set certain boundaries, educate yourself. Luckily for me and him, we've experienced the kind of lifestyles we have at a very young age, so we know what to look for. We know the warning signs. We know the behaviors. You know, when they become withdrawn and distant, change their patterns and change their friends, it might be a little time to become concerned. It might be a little time to become more involved in their activities. If you have to, you can go to a drugstore, any drugstore, and buy drug testing kits nowadays. You know, if you suspect your child to be doing something that is not healthy for them and that may lead into some sort of different lifestyle that could be ultimately crippling in their life as an adult, take advanced measures, you know, go get a drug test, approach them.
You got a drug test, you tested, it's positive. What do you do as a parent?
Scare them, set boundaries, inform them, become educated in it yourself, and most of all, don't ever give up.
Don't give up.
Don't give up, but don't cater to them either, you know. You can't cater to them because it doesn't help them, it just enables them.
So, here's a teenager, troublemaker. How do you feel when your parent yells at you? Because that's the only thing the parent has left. Like, your child created a problem and he yells at you. Does it help or does it put you away from your parents?
It pulls you away from your parents, I believe.
Yeah.
It makes you more, how do you say?
Well, it puts a deeper distance
More
between
resentment.
you and your parents.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it just solidifies whatever resentments,
whatever
you have
feelings you
against
have,
them.
yeah.
So what do you think a parent should do that minute? Hug the person, talk,
Therapy,
or
talk. Try to
Yeah.
break through somehow. Try to become more involved, more understanding. Communication is the key in any kind of relationship, whether it be friendship, marriage, sibling, children, anything like that. Communication is a very strong thing to have within any family or relationship in life.
Well, Rani and Vlad, thank you so much. I feel like you told us so much today, especially Rani. I feel like if I ask you 100 more questions, you would keep answering because you have been through so much, and it's like you could write a book. You could write a book.
I don't think I'd even remember all the details of my life to be able to finish.
Yeah.
There's so
But
many.
you have
One
told,
would pop
you
again
have
and again.
you have been through so much. I have been through a little bit with my child when he was sick, and I thought, man, I've been through the most, more than people had been in life. But you had been
in our lives that have experienced even worse circumstances.
Yeah.
Yes, but listening to you, you've been through so much, and you're strong, and you're happy, and you have a lad,
And I have a lot of life to live for.
and your family is back together, and you have a good life. So thank you so much for sharing today. Thank you so much for visiting us. And I hope this video is going to help lots of parents and teenagers out there.
Yes.
Thank you.